The story begins in some rather strange laboratory. A very stocky man held a small, defenseless boy by the shirt and asked him who he thought he was. The little boy with glasses did not understand what this man was talking about. He asked him why. And he was full of aggression. It seemed that he was about to burst out of anger. He tells the boy what his phrase, "why," means, how he even allowed himself to ask why. The man hit the boy in the face with such force that even the poor boy's glasses flew off. He began to say that this boy was none other than a freak. He had called him so many times, why he kept running away. The poor boy huddled against the wall and curled up, while the man continued to speak to the boy. Did this boy think that if he kept going, this burly man would not catch him? The man said that those who learn slowly start to remember everything quite quickly after a study. The stocky man again began to beat the poor little boy. He beat him with all his might, and the boy could do nothing else. The man asked the boy if he didn't think so. Suddenly, someone approached the man from behind and grabbed him by the shoulder, but who was it? The burly man himself did not understand this yet. Then a rather young man with blonde hair approached. The stocky man immediately realized that it was Ben Hong. Ben Hong asked the man what he was doing, why all this, why he was doing this to his friend. The man has 100% already come a long way. Ben Hoon approached the little boy. As it turned out, his name was Haran. Ben Hoon asked the boy's permission to examine him to see if he was all right. The boy allowed. The poor boy was all beaten up. Ben Hoon says his face is completely disfigured. He thinks the boy has been avoiding them for quite some time. Suddenly the little boy remembered something and said to himself that he was already late. Ben Hong started to say to the boy that he was so happy to see him that he waved at him, but the boy didn't understand and ran away from him. Ben Hong was very disappointed then. He asked the boy if he did not think so. Ben Hun leaned over to the boy and asked why he had run away. His young man was bright red. Apparently he was very angry. The poor little boy was very frightened, his whole face covered with blood. All he could do was pick up his wallet. Ben Hoon turned and left with his friends. He said he was tired of it all. Another burly man offered to do everything for him. They all laughed. Poor Haran sat under the wall and only heard how they laughed at him. Suddenly he looked up at something. Haran looked at his watch and realized that he was already very late. He gathered all his things and started running as fast as he could. The little boy ran to his house and quickly closed the door. He put the briefcase on the chair, and he himself went to the table with the computer, which was standing under the wall. Haran placed his broken glasses on the table and picked up the VR glasses. He put them on and picked up the joysticks to play. Suddenly the connection to the network started. He quickly entered his login and password. Connection completed. Now the little boy has to choose a character. One of the characters is blue and the other character is yellow. Finally, everything was done. He chose a yellow character. Haran was already at the 99th level. There were several people in that rather strange place. They all began to say that they were waiting for Haran. Finally Haran joined them. One man was very angry. He was not only angry, but also quite scary. The man began to shout loudly at the little boy Haran, why he did not join for so long, why he was late. Haran only apologized to him, tilting his head downwards. In all this commotion, a rather pleasant voice of a girl was suddenly heard. She was a very pretty, red-haired girl who was still very shy. She apologized for interrupting them, but she only registered today. She didn't even know what she needed to do yet, so she decided to ask everyone else. Haran went to her and calmed her down. He suggested that everyone try to finish all the work from below in about an hour. One of the men said he liked it. Another man wished good things, and Haran himself said that then he would accept the quest. The master of the game agreed with Haran and showed him all the conditions that he had to agree to. Haran shouted forward loudly. Haran began to tell that this game was called Quest Hero. This is the best virtual game, it has taken the gaming market by storm. A high level of freedom and different ways of completing quests. He says it's a game that's getting a really great user response. Suddenly, the same pretty girl interrupted Heron and asked him if they were going there. One of their team told her to just trust Heron and follow him. The girl listened to this man and agreed with him. Heron tells everyone that they just need to follow him at the same pace as him. They just have to follow the line. Suddenly the little boy Heron stopped and said that it was enough. Heron stomped his foot menacingly on the ground. The sweet little girl began to say that it was all very wonderful. They traveled all this long way without meeting a single pack. One man on the team tells this girl that this is just the beginning. He continued to say that the most interesting things will only begin now. Heron began to tell how he himself started playing this amazing game. At first, he started playing simply out of curiosity. Throughout the game, he tried many different types of patterns and distinct methods. He continues to say that the number of people who learned about him was constantly growing. Finally, by this time he became what he is today. He reached considerable heights, which many do not even manage to do. Meanwhile, when Heron was telling his story about this game, the infernal battles started and all of Heron's group participated in this battle. It was a very strong battle between the blue and yellow players of the game. Finally, the entire area was cleared. Heron began to tell his team that they were pretty good at this fight and they managed it in just 40 minutes. The whole team was very happy that they managed to do it, even that cute girl was very happy. The little red-haired girl began to speak to Heron. She was very grateful to him. Thanks to Heron, she will not be late with her plans 100%. Heron answers that it is not only his merit, but also the merit of the whole team. Only thanks to unity, they were able to go through this battle. Suddenly, a man from the team objected to Heron's words. The man says that this is all thanks to Heron, thanks to his help with clearing the area. A small strange man also joined the previous man's words. He is so cute and round, like a ball. He says that man was right, Heron was the best leader. Heron smiled proudly. He thanked each member of the team for these sincere and warm words in his direction. The red-haired girl began to say that she would probably go first. Then the small circle of men said that he too would be leaving. Heron was shocked why everyone was leaving so early. One of the men said that it was time for him to go too because he still had work to do. He thanked everyone else for their game. The burly man, the last of the team, tells Heron not to be late tomorrow, because he could let his whole team down. The last member of the team said goodbye to Heron and left the game. Heron stood and waved to the last member of the team. The young boy was left alone. All around him was emptiness. Heron was finally able to exhale. Everything is complete. The young boy thought, maybe he should go too. Suddenly he saw something very strange right in front of him. Heron did not understand what it was. Where did some very strange monster come from? The young boy says that it is still here. He had never seen such a strange monster before. Heron wondered what he should do now. This very strange monster, or a monster, it is not clear what to call it, approached Heron directly. The monster's face was right next to Heron's. The young boy was frightened. What was this at all, even so unexpected? Heron says that this strange sight is not pleasant at all. The young boy realized that all this was not important at all, he would simply defeat him and leave this game. Suddenly he realized that something was holding his hands, but he did not understand what was happening, why he could not handle his hands. A young boy, Heron, says that his character does not obey him at all. What even happens in this game? Very strange things began to happen. The character of the young boy Heron began to disappear somewhere. Suddenly he disappeared completely. Heron found himself in some other and rather strange place. He was submerged underwater. Heron quickly rose from the water and began to breathe freely. The young boy could not be inspired. He had the feeling that he was about to run out of air. Finally, he began to understand what was happening around him, but he still did not understand what kind of place he was in. The young boy began to remember whether there was such a place in this game or not. He thought that maybe it was a new location that had just been added. The young boy Heron rose to his feet and began to look at his reflection in the water. Heron saw that all his things were gone, but where they all went, he still didn't understand. The young boy began to reassure himself that this is just madness, it is most likely just some very strange dream, there is absolutely no sense in this. The boy asked himself if it could be that this was just a hacked version of this strange game. The young boy Heron did not understand what he should do now, what he would say to his teammates. He began to remember each member of his favorite team, they are all so sweet and friendly. Heron realized that he had farted too much. Suddenly, a strange man in black appeared behind the young boy. He had a giant sword in his hands. Finally, Heron felt that there was someone behind him. The young boy Heron mentally asks himself if this is a monster, why is this so strange at all? Heron realized that he couldn't do anything, he didn't even have any weapons. The young boy says in his mind that he will just quietly run away, because he has no other option, that's for sure. Heron and this strange monster met their eyes. Their looks were very different. Heron's look was very scared, but that strange monster's look, on the contrary, was very angry and full of aggression. Suddenly, the monster tried to strike Heron with his sword. The young boy Heron jumped back in time from the blow. Heron clearly understood that he was in trouble, but what should he do now, how to get out of this situation whole and unscathed? All the while Heron is thinking, the monster continues to attack the little boy. Young Heron knew that he just had to get out of this game, then all this horror would be over. Suddenly, something very surprised the young boy. There was no way Heron could get out of this game, but why? He asked why he could not leave the game, what was the reason? Meanwhile, the monster was already very angry, because he could not defeat Heron. Heron kept trying to get out, he kept repeating that he had to get out, but he couldn't. Suddenly, Heron's face began to glow bright red. His eyes seemed to be filled with blood. The young boy says that he cannot get out, but it is not at all clear what will happen next. Suddenly, the strange monster's sword was right in front of Heron's eyes. The monster hit him with all its might. But this monster did not succeed, the young boy Heron managed to bounce back from this terrible blow. Heron did not understand what was happening. The young boy Heron stood and looked at that terrible monster. Suddenly, something incomprehensible began to happen, which surprised Heron quite a lot. The monster again tries to hit Heron from a very long distance. Unfortunately, the monster managed to hit the young boy Heron on the arm. Heron says there was another monster. But this blow was very strong and Heron was very hurt. Suddenly the young boy Heron understood something, his eyes just lit up from this thought. Heron realized that he couldn't possibly be hurt. It's just a game. Heron cannot feel any pain in this game. Maybe all this is nothing but. But the young boy did not have time to finish, someone interrupted him. Someone knocked on the door, or it was not clear from where. Heron continued to hear someone knocking on the post. A lot of other scary monsters started gathering behind those two monsters. Now the young boy understood that this is not a game, but an absolute reality. Heron was very scared, he did not know what to do. Is it all really real? Isn't it all an ordinary game, but reality? Heron says that all this does not make any sense, but how did it all happen in the first place? The young boy Heron was 100% sure that he was just playing a normal game. Suddenly he felt something very strange, he didn't understand what it was. He had never felt anything like this before. Heron quickly turned around and realized what that feeling was. This is a sense of danger. A monster was standing behind the young boy. He was trying to hit Heron. Heron did not understand at all what kind of strange things were happening. One of those very strange and scary monsters tells another monster not to let Heron go or give him a chance to escape. Heron was very surprised by what he heard. He did not know what they were talking about. One of those scary monsters yelled at the young boy that he was just an ordinary freak. Finally, the young boy Heron realized that these are not monsters, they are ordinary people. At this time, Heron's eyes lit up red from the aggression and anger that filled the young boy. Suddenly Heron asked these people to wait literally a second. The young boy Heron started to move back and caught his foot over a stone. The young boy began to fall. He fell to the ground and bruised himself very badly. At this time, these terrible monsters began to attack him. They all wished Heron dead. Suddenly, the swords of the strange monsters crossed over Heron's neck, and from among the crowd of these strange monsters or humans, someone loudly shouted "Stop!" A burly man began to say to Heron that he had not told him not to act recklessly. The young boy Heron was very surprised by what he saw. The stocky man ordered the other men to lift and set this young man on his feet. The men ordered Heron to get up. Suddenly, a rather strange girl with blue hair approached Heron. She asked him who he was and told him to indicate his identity. The young boy Heron thought that it was quite strange why she looked so similar to. But suddenly he started to answer this girl because he understood that in this situation he had no time to think. One of the men came up to him from behind and said that it was enough to think, he had to answer that girl immediately. Heron thought again that he did not know how to explain all this to him. Suddenly, something very strange and incomprehensible began to happen again. Heron did not understand what was happening around him at all. Something strange and incomprehensible began to fall under everyone's feet. It was all covered in blood. These were the heads of the men who attacked Heron just recently. The young boy Heron did not understand what was happening. He looked very scared and worried. Suddenly someone came up behind them and stomped his foot loudly. This leg was covered in blood, but it was not clear who it was. He was a very big and scary man. His whole body was covered in blood. The girl with blue hair took her sword in her hands and looked at that strange huge man. A man in a very strange mask and with gray hair says that it is an ambush. He began to shout loudly to the other men who looked like him like 2 drops of water. They were all dressed the same and all had the same color hair. This man told his savages not to surrender under any circumstances. All of them replied to their chief executive that they would do everything as he said. One very large man gripped an axe tightly in his hand and raised it to the mountain. This man was very large. He was not like all the others, his eyes were glowing red and all the clothes he was wearing were all torn. Heron stood a little apart, he was as if in a fog. A lot of drops of blood flew near him. Suddenly, one of these drops of blood fell directly on Heron's forehead. Heron suddenly heard someone knocking. He whispered that he just died. The young boy Heron kept saying in his mind that someone had indeed died. Finally, this young boy understood everything. He understood that this is no longer a game, this is all reality. One of the masked men approached the huge man and said, "Savage." The man in the mask asked the huge man how he even allowed himself to do this. This man began attacking the huge man. Suddenly something very strange and incomprehensible happened. Heron hit the masked man and he fell face down on the ground. A man in a mask was lying on the ground with his eyes closed. He was completely covered in blood. It was clear that he was wounded, or even killed. The young boy Heron stood very frightened. Because of how scared he was, there were even drops of sweat on his face. Heron began to say in his head that it was coming this way, they should run. When Heron spoke of it, he meant that huge man with red eyes. Suddenly, this huge man was already standing very close to that girl with blue hair. The young boy Heron was very frightened. He did not understand what he should do now. Suddenly he saw how a huge, stout man began to attack with his axe. He hit the girl with blue hair very hard. She flew a very long distance, from a very strong impact. She writhed in pain, she couldn't even stand up. The blue-haired girl took out her sword and stuck it into the ground for support. The young boy Heron began to understand that if he left her alone with this huge man, she would most likely die. Therefore, Heron should do something to save her. He began to think about what he should do. Nothing came to his mind, he could not think of any course of action. The young boy Heron understood that most of all he did not want to die. And to die for the sake of some person unknown to him is completely absurd. Heron decided that it would be best for him to just run away. He started to run away, but suddenly someone grabbed his leg. It was the same masked man with gray hair that he had hit. This man begged the young boy to save this girl with blue hair. With the last of his strength, this masked man told the young boy Heron that he must do it, it is his duty. A man in a mask and with gray hair simply fell face down on the ground. Most likely, this man simply died. Heron's eyes were simultaneously filled with fear and aggression. He stood still because he was very short of breath. The young boy Heron did not understand who she was. Who is this girl with blue hair? Heron stood and continued to think. Suddenly he was very insistent, because maybe he started to remember something, and maybe something else. A large black rectangle with a blue rim appeared right in front of the young boy. Heron did not understand anything at all, what it is and what is happening here. Inscriptions appeared in this rectangle. As it turned out, it was also a quest. Heron needed to protect the princess. This girl with blue hair was called Princess Yuta. She was ambushed by a monster. The young boy thought about the name Yuta. This name was quite familiar to him. A picture of the girl from the game appeared before his eyes. Finally, the young boy Heron understood who this girl with blue hair was and what he had to do. Suddenly, the inscription in a black rectangle with a blue rim changed. The new inscription told Heron that if he failed this quest, he would simply die. The young boy Heron simply fell to his knees. Heron started laughing. Most likely, it was not a laugh of joy, but a laugh of fear. The huge man hit the girl with blue hair again and she flew very far away. She fell to the ground and could not even move. The girl, Yuta, began to say that she simply could not die there, she had to survive. No matter what it costs her, she must survive in any case. When the blue-haired girl raised her head, she saw in front of her the leg of that huge monster, which was covered in blood. This huge man began to speak to her. He said he would take her life. At that moment, her eyes were filled with aggression, but at the same time she was frightened, because she did not understand what she should do now. The huge monster raised its sword to the mountain and swung at the blue-haired girl Yuta. Suddenly, Heron appeared directly in front of Princess Yuta. He saved the girl from a huge monster. Princess Yuta did not understand at all what had happened, because she was already on the verge of death, but she was saved in time. Heron loudly began to shout at the blue-haired girl that while he was trying to hold this huge monster, she would need to get up very quickly and run away from there. The huge monster was already very angry, his eyes became even more red. He tensed. All his muscles were stretched like a string. The huge man swung at the little boy Heron. This monster was at the same time very angry and even smiled a little, because he understood that it was almost impossible to defeat a giant like him. The huge man hit the boy with all his might. Heron flew away quite a distance because the blow was very strong. The young boy fell flat on his back. He hit his head hard on the ground. This made Heron very angry. Suddenly, this huge man hit the young boy very hard again. This time the blow was even stronger. Heron left for retirement twice as much as then. The young boy Heron was almost powerless. He was lying on the ground and could not get up. Heron looked up at the huge man. This man hit the boy again. Heron allegedly managed to escape the blow. Heron jumped back a little to avoid being hit by this huge man. The young boy did not understand what had happened. His eyes were filled with surprise. Heron seems to have begun to understand the sequence of attacks of this huge man. After displaying a strong enough attack, a horizontal long-range attack follows. A sai follows. Then again the next very strong attack. Finally, the young boy Heron understood everything. The scheme of attacks of this huge man is exactly the same as in the quest, Guardian of the Hero. It is very good that Heron understood all this and noticed this sequence. Heron mentally says that he can see through his attacks. Now the young boy Heron can roughly make a plan of action in his head. Now understanding this huge man, Heron can block him. But all the same, one unresolved problem remains. How can Heron bring in this huge man to save Princess Yuta? Suddenly Heron turned back and noticed something. A girl with blue hair, Yuta, was sitting on the ground. But why doesn't she run away from there? The huge man raised his axe again towards the mountain. The young boy Heron noticed this very early. Heron raised his sword to the mountain to block this huge man's attack. Heron was holding the attack blocking with his last strength. The young boy says in his mind that he has failed. The huge man's eyes became more and more aggressive. Heron planted his foot on the ground to ward off the attack. The young boy Heron understood that he would not be able to hold out even a little longer. His efforts will definitely not be enough for a long time. The huge man began to laugh very evilly. Suddenly, the entire mouth of the huge man was filled with blood. Someone pierced the belly of this huge monster with a sword. This monster started spitting blood. It was clear that he would definitely not live anymore. It was clear that the girl with the blue hair had killed him. A man stood on the side and quietly watched all this. The blue-haired girl, Yuta, stood very angry. Her face was covered with drops of blood. On the other side stood the young boy Heron. He was also very angry, but there was also fear in his eyes. The two of them stood on opposite sides of the huge man. This man was lying on the ground and in his back was the sword of the girl with blue hair. Heron looked at him with the understanding that this huge man was already dead. He realized that there was nothing to be afraid of, so he let go of his sword. Heron's sword fell right next to the huge man's head. Suddenly, this huge man exhaled. It was clear that the girl with the blue hair had not killed that huge man after all. The huge man clenched his hand into a fist. When the man got to his feet, his eyes were completely red. He was very angry. Heron was very scared, but he understood that he had to act now, because if he didn't act, he would fail the quest and die immediately. This huge man hit the young boy Heron very hard. The young boy Heron flew to a very long distance. This huge man, realizing that he had already hit Heron and that this young boy would no longer hinder him in his further actions, turned to the girl with blue hair. The huge man took the girl Yuta in his big hand. He threw her back not too far either, as did Harana. The huge man stood still. There was a very large pool of blood under him from the fact that the girl had inserted the sword directly into his back. The girl with blue hair was lying on the ground without moving. And the little boy Heron hit a tree very hard, on the other side of this huge man. The huge man stamped his foot and turned to face Heron. Right in front of him lay the young boy's sword. Heron raised his head and looked at him. He didn't understand what he had to do to protect the blue-haired girl. The huge man came a little closer to the girl with blue hair. He was covered in blood. The girl continued to lie on the ground without moving. A young boy, Heron, tells himself that he needs to stand up to protect this girl, Yuta. He began to get to his feet, although he did not have the strength to do so. Suddenly, someone ran very fast right next to Heron. The young boy did not even have time to understand who it was. This man, who ran by the young boy, had a sword in his hands. This man stood up for the girl with blue hair and the young boy. He hit this huge man. The huge man became very angry and screamed in pain. A man who ran by the young boy began to beat this huge man very hard. A huge man fell to the ground not far from the girl with blue hair. Everything around was covered in blood and the sword of that man's defender was also covered in blood. The young boy Heron did not understand what happened at all. The huge man had already been lying on the ground for a long time. It was clear that he would not get up again. He bled, so we can say with confidence that he died. The man who saved the blue-haired girl Yuta and the young boy Sharon stood and watched it all. His face was completely covered in blood. He walked up to the blue-haired girl Yuta. This man started telling her to get up, she can't die. Suddenly she opened her blue eyes. The man asked her if she was okay. Young boy Heron sat on the ground and continues to observe this situation. Suddenly he heard a rather familiar sound. This is a notification from the game. The notification said that the tutorial quest has already been completed. There was also another notification from the quest that the owner of this image had managed to protect the royal person of Yuta from the kingdom of Ale, but there were still assassins who targeted Princess Yuta. He needs to protect her from them, follow her and wait for the main quest. He will be able to return only if he completes all the main quests. If he doesn't, he'll just die. The young boy Heron started talking to himself that it all seemed so real, but what a quest window this was. He is sure that someone died right in front of his eyes. It was not a game, but how? Suddenly someone called Heron. It was a girl with blue hair Yuta. She asked Heron what his name was. The young boy Heron looked very frightened, but he answered her and introduced himself as Heron. The girl Yuta tells Heron that she owes him now. She says that she is the one who always pays back her debts. Now Heron should follow her and she will reward him for saving her. The young boy Heron repeated her words in his mind, to follow her. Then quickly agreed with her. The man who was standing next to the girl Yuta began to say that they did not even know this boy. He asked Princess Yuta why they were taking him with them, how they could trust him. The blue-haired girl, Yuta, replied to the man that there was no need to keep Heron so far away. If he planned to harm them, he would have already done it. He definitely had the opportunity to do it already. Heron stood by that man and did not know what to do next, whether to go with them or stay put. The girl with blue hair went towards that huge man. She says that before that they should spend it properly. The man agreed with her and said he would find a place somewhere nearby for it. The girl Yuta thanked him for his care and help to her. The three of them came to some very nice place. Behind them was an orange sunset, and fireflies were flying around. One of the three drew his sword. It was a girl with blue hair Yuta. She stuck the sword into the ground. The girl began to tell that after her father was killed and everyone turned away from her, they were the only ones who protected her until the very end so that nothing happened. She also added that they are not even of the same blood, she is from the royal family, and they are ordinary people. The man who was always next to the girl Yuta began to say that they were the royal guard. They are excellent warriors who deserve their glory and honor. Yuta's girlfriend says that talking about honor is quite cruel. She adds that those who left him now live in luxury. But those who kept their honor were buried there. The man stood silently and respectfully listened to what the girl said. The young boy Heron also stood and listened to the story of the girl with blue hair. The girl Yuta started walking and said that it was time for them to move on. The girl and the man left, but Harren stood still and looked at them. The young boy looked very upset. Harren exhaled softly. It was already deep night. The sky was covered with stars, and big birds were flying around. There were two men sitting in the woods near the steps. One of them looked a lot like the one who tried to kill the blue-haired girl Yuta. Another was sitting and sleeping, a long stick in his hands and a hat on his head. Suddenly, a man in a hat heard something and began to listen. A third man came down from the trees. He was sitting there with his feet against the mountain. He began to tell a certain Horian that no matter how long he waits, he still does not see any princess. The savage, who went out on reconnaissance, also disappeared. A man with red eyes was sitting and eating some kind of meat. His face was covered in blood. He says that the savage simply betrayed them. He is a real traitor. The man in the hat raised his head and said that the savage certainly could not betray them. The man sitting in the tree asked the man in the hat if he trusted those savages. This is quite strange of him. The man in the hat replies that he is not talking about that at all. Judging by everything, Princess Yuta had already avoided all their traps. The man with red eyes says that he will definitely catch the princess. The tree man asks, so why not go get her right now? The man in the hat replies that there is no need for it now. He adds that he already knows where she is going and it will be much easier for them to meet her there. Princess Yuta, her husband, and the little boy Harren were walking through a wonderfully beautiful forest. The man who was with the princess suddenly stopped. He began to say that at last they had come to the land of Mawan. The young boy Harren raised his head and was very surprised. A man in white clothing was standing with his head down. At 3 they came to the palace, which was on the land of Mawan. This palace was fantastically beautiful and unlike any other palace that the young Harren boy had ever seen. In that palace, a man in white clothes was sitting and writing something on a piece of paper. They knocked on the door, and this man answered that it was open and they could safely enter the middle of the palace. A man who was an assistant to this man in white came in. He shouted loudly, "Governor!" This man shouted loudly, the princess is back." Finally it happened. The governor was very surprised and asked if it was true at all, if he was absolutely sure that the princess had returned. The man, the governor's assistant, started running towards the governor. 2 guards stood by the door, Princess Yuta with Harren and the man who is always by her side. Princess Yuta approached the governor. She seemed so small compared to him. The girl with blue hair lowered her gaze to the governor. The governor stood and could not say anything. He was quite excited. Suddenly, small beads of tears appeared in the eyes. He hugged Princess Yuta and said that he was very happy to see her, and the most important thing was that she was alive and well. The governor named Princess Yuta, "Madam," he addressed her with great respect. Princess Yuta was very happy to meet the governor. She tells him that it's been a long time since their last meeting. She can't even remember the last time she saw him. As it turned out, this governor's name is Old Man Mavan. A lot of people gathered around them, but they continued hugging regardless of anything. Some time passed and everyone sat down at the table to have dinner. Governor Mavan began to say that since the village is very small, the food prepared is quite modest. He adds that Ms. Yuta has come a long way and must be very tired. He apologized to the princess for the modesty of the reception. Princess Yuta replies that everything is fine. She says it's been a long time since she's eaten anything that even resembles food. Governor Mavan laughed. He asked the princess if he remembered correctly that 10 years had passed. He adds that he almost recognized her. The princess asked if 10 years had already passed. From that moment on, Governor Mavan has grown quite old and politicized. The governor was very amused by the words of Princess Yuta. The governor says that he can't do anything about his age, he can't stop time in any way. Princess Utah asked the governor if she had bent her stick or if he had taken offense at her words. Governor Mawan replied that he was not offended in any way, he was just very happy to see her safe and sound. The governor adds that it is most likely thanks to these two warriors that they brought their princess in one piece and in safety. The man who is always by Princess Utah's side says that he is the commander of the royal guard. The governor asked Haran who he was. The young boy Haran was very frightened, he did not know what to answer him. Princess Utah answered for Haran that he had saved her on the way to the lands of Mawan. She wants to reward him. Princess Utah asked Governor Mawan if she could ask him to do it for her. The governor was very surprised, but answered that of course he would do something like that, it would be a great honor for him. The governor placed his strong hand on Haran's small shoulder. The governor bent down to face Haran. Mavan said that because Haran saved the life of the princess, he cannot be an ordinary young man, he must have some extraordinary power. Haran looked very frightened but agreed with Governor Mawan's words. The governor looked at him. Mavan asked the little boy Haran, he must be very tired because he had come a long way. The governor offered Haran to rest properly. Princess Utah thanked the governor for his generosity and kindness. Governor Mavan turned to the head of the Yule family. He asked the head of the family to accompany the princess and special guests. The head of the Yule family agreed with the governor. It was a deep night in the land of Mawan, the stars shone beautifully in the sky and the moon shone brightly. The young boy Haran was lying in bed and could not sleep. He was constantly disturbed by various thoughts. He remembered how one warrior had begged Haran to save Princess Utah. A picture from the game appeared before his eyes again. The task of the quest, to protect the princess, was written there. Princess Utah was ambushed by a monster, you need to help her and defeat the monster. Haran did not understand at all what was happening, what this task was about. The young boy mentally says that he still can't get out of this game. Most likely, if he wants to return home, he needs to complete all the quests that this game will offer. He kept thinking that in order to do this, he would have to constantly go after Princess Utah. But what should he do after receiving the award? He didn't understand at all. Haran closed his eyes and exhaled. Suddenly, he heard a very familiar sound again. It was a sound from the game and the young boy Haran opened his eyes very quickly. Before him was the task of the main quest called 7 Ships. The first trial. You need to save Princess Utah from an unexpected attack by assassins. The reward for winning this battle will be one of the gem fragments. He got out of bed and realized that this was another quest. He did not understand what the unexpected attack meant and where another assassin had come from. He quickly left his room and looked around. Suddenly he saw something near his room. A large axe and a dagger lay near a small pile of firewood. He took both weapons in his hands and began to consider them, which he should choose for the further protection of Princess Utah. Haran thought about the choice. A little further, from Haran's room, there was a light and 2 guards standing by another door. Governor Mavan was sitting at the table in that room. He looked quite upset. Only one small candle was lit in the room. Suddenly, the candle went out due to a strong gust of wind. But it was not the wind. It was the same man in the hat who was sitting in the forest near the steps. He asked the governor if Princess Utah had really come to this palace. The man in the hat continued to say, as it should be, that she trusted Governor Mawan very much. The man told the governor that he made his job very easy. The governor replied to the man that he only cooperated with Zod, not with him. The man in the hat laughed and agreed with the governor. He asked the governor's permission to ask him a few questions. Without waiting for the governor's answer, the man in the hat says that on the way to the lands of Mavan, he saw the corpse of one of his subordinates, he was not bad enough. The man in the hat went on to say that even if he was a savage, he was still his subordinate. Whoever he is, he will still meet the one who did it. Governor Mavin tells the man that if he is looking for the commander of the royal guard, then he has nothing to worry about. Governor Mavin removed him to Princess Utah. The man in the hat replies to Governor Mawan that he shouldn't have done so much work, he didn't ask for it. Suddenly the governor called the man into the Hu chapel and asked him to stop. Governor Mawan says that he has done everything as he promised, he has captured Princess Utah and distanced from her those who can help her. Now it's the man in the hat's turn, he needs to release Governor Mawan's grandson. The man in the hat asked the governor what he should do if he didn't want to do it. The man in the hat adds that the master asked to convey the following words to the governor: now, the life of his grandson depends solely on his loyalty. The man laughed and left the room. He laughed very loudly, and the governor was very upset at all that this hideous man said to him. Governor Mavin did not know what to do now, how to save his grandson. Suddenly someone started talking to Princess Utah. He called her and asked how much longer she was going to sleep. A man asked her if she had forgotten what day it was today. The princess needs to wake up immediately. Princess Utah got up and saw what her dead father was saying. She quickly ran up to him and hugged him as hard as she could. The girl was very happy about this meeting. Princess Utah says he is alive. She knew he was alive. The princess's father asked her what she was talking about. Did she dream of some kind of horror? Princess Utah says that he promised her. He promised that he would always be with her. Father calmly exhaled. He put his big hand on his daughter's small shoulder. The father says that that is why he returned to her, because he could not fail to fulfill his promise to his daughter. Suddenly she realized that it was not her father. He swung a knife at the defenseless blue-haired girl Utah. Suddenly, it is not clear from where, a young boy Haran appeared. He hit that man and he flew away from Princess Utah a great distance. Princess Utah sat on the bed very frightened. And the young boy's eyes were filled with aggression. Utah's girlfriend did not understand what was happening. This man hit his head directly on the wall. The assassin warrior turned and smiled his terrible smile. He says that he is in enough pain. The young boy Haran was not going to stop at all, he was determined to protect Princess Utah to the last. The assistant of the man in the hat asked Haran if he was a mere servant. He adds that his bravery is very commendable, but that he is not different in intelligence from others. He asked the young boy if he could manage in the dark. Suddenly Haran's eyes lit up. The assassin warrior tried to attack the young boy Haran. But Haran repelled this blow. The assistant says that he is already so slow. In that case, for such dumb as Haran, at least the movements should be very fast. Suddenly, Haran punched the man's assistant in the hat right in the face. The man's assistant lay motionless on the ground. The young Haran breathed a sigh of relief that he had defeated this hideous man. Princess Utah did not understand at all what had happened. The little boy Haran asked the girl with blue hair if she was okay and if she was not hurt. Suddenly, something very loudly exploded in the room and a pink flash appeared. Haran was very focused on defense and Princess Utah looked very scared. The man in the hat laughed. He knocked on the door and entered Princess Utah's room. The man in the hat says that he has finally met the princess in person. The man had a huge sword in his hands. Princess Utah screamed loudly and asked the man in the hat who he was. All the man in the hat answered was the phrase that Princess Utah is very good at running away. He added that she still had to meet him sooner or later. A young boy, Haran, began to protect Princess Utah. The man in the hat was quite a strong opponent. He just looked down on the young boy. He tightened his grip on his sword. The man in the hat kicked Haran very hard in the stomach. Haran fell straight to the floor. The man in the hat told Haran that he was already annoying him a lot because he was preventing him from doing what he had planned. The young boy Heron mentally says that this man distracted him with his hand and attacked him with a kick. While the man in the hat told Heron that he would play with him when he finished his main work, the blue-haired girl took her sword and began to defend herself as well. Before Princess Utah could hit the man in the hat, he stepped back a little and put the princess on the floor with his sword. He says that never in his life could he have thought that this day would come when he would meet her. The man says that he has killed a very large number of people, but he has never killed members of the royal family. The princess will be first on his list. The young boy Heron mentally said no, this simply cannot be. Suddenly, the man in the hat turned to the young boy again and kissed him right in the face with his foot. The man in the hat says that it really is. Heron flew to a great distance, only the wall in the room stopped him. The man in the hat says that Heron is a simple freak who constantly annoys everyone and nothing more. The man raised his hand and asked the young boy Heron if he saw this. He was very excited at the thought of killing the princess, for which he had been waiting for a long time. The young boy looked at him with a very angry look. The man in the hat adds that Heron won't bother him anymore. Horion's husband turned around and walked towards the girl with blue hair. Heron was already very angry with the situation that was happening around him. A young boy tried to attack a man in a hat. The man says that it is very hot. He adds that Heron is just a freak. The man hit the young boy again, but this time even harder. The eyes of the man in the hat were very aggressive. The young boy Heron quickly started running to the girl Utah. Utah sat on the floor very frightened. The man in the hat stomped his foot on the floor to use his strength. Heron quickly jumped out the window with Utah in his arms. Princess Utah did not understand what this young boy was doing. And Heron was very focused on what he was doing, because only that could save them. While the man in the hat looked out the window, the two of them fell into the river that flowed there. The man in the hat laughed loudly. There was no trace of them there. It was already a very deep night, the stars were shining in the sky and the whole village was illuminated by the moon. Governor Marvin was surprised by what he heard. He asked if it was even true. The head of the Yule family says that this is 100% true. They said that Heron evaded a surprise attack by the assassins and escaped. The governor says in his mind that everything is very bad. He tried so hard to give Horion this opportunity, but he lost it in vain. The governor continued to say in his mind that there were still many who remained loyal to the fallen king of these lands. Therefore, in order not to get caught, the governor allowed Horion to do it. But if he lost Princess Utah, the life of Governor Mawan's grandson would be in danger. The governor does not know what to do now. Governor Marvin sat and went through all the options in his head. Suddenly the governor's eyes lit up bright blue. The governor got up from the table and loudly called the head of the Yule family. The governor ordered the head of the Yule family that they will now search for Princess Utah. He needs to inform about this to all the soldiers who were on the territory of the palace. The river under the windows of the palace stood calmly in place, as if there was no one in it. Suddenly, air bubbles appeared there. Finally, the young boy Heron emerged from the water alive. He mentally says that he is alive. The young boy looked around and did not understand where Utah was. Finally he saw her, but she was unconscious. He quickly swam to her and kept repeating in his head that he hoped she was alive. She cannot die there. He swam to her and took her in his arms. The young boy mentally says that everything is fine, she is alive. He thinks she just passed out. Heron decided that the best option now was to find a place where they could rest for a while. He found a small shed and took Princess Utah there. The young boy carefully placed her on a pile of hay. Heron sat looking at the girl with blue hair and wondered what he should do now. He was very worried about her, whether she would be okay. He decided that he probably had better wait until Princess Utah came to her senses. But Harren understood that it was quite scary. Suddenly, he heard the same sound from the game again. He did not understand why the quest was not completed. On the apartment from the game it was written that the quest to save the princess in an unexpected attack was not completed, it is still in progress. Many soldiers opened one of the doors in the palace. A man's hand appeared from behind the door, it was covered in blood. It was a man who was always by Princess Yuta's side. But why is he covered in blood? The soldiers got into a defensive position. The man mentally asked if Mavan had joined Zod yet. The soldiers raised their swords and swung at the man. The man quickly grabbed the hand of one of the soldiers and stopped him. He pushed the soldier away. The man took his sword even better in his hand to attack. In his mind, he said that he had very little time, he needed to find Princess Yuta as soon as possible. And he told the soldiers that he would give them the right to die a dignified death. The soldiers were very indignant at his words. The man quickly killed all the soldiers, but suddenly someone behind him started talking. Someone says that he was very interested in who the commander of the royal guard was. The commander of the royal guard quickly turned and saw behind him a man in a hat. He quickly realized that it was Horian. Horian says that a lot of time has passed since their last meeting. The commander tells Horian that he should be in prison for a long time. The man in the hat replies that he was more likely to be promoted than sent to prison. Horian adds that in the end, after the death of Princess Yuta, the commander of the royal guard will be completely useless. A man in a hat attacked the commander of the royal guard. Horian asked the commander whether he was still loyal to the dead king. Doesn't he think it's time to end it all? The commander of the royal army told Horian to shut his mouth. Horian replied that this is exactly what he is talking about, that this is his maximum. The commander took the sword harder and swung at the man in the hat. It was very dark in the shed where Harren and Princess Yuta were. Suddenly the princess opened her very beautiful eyes. She quickly stood up, because she did not understand where she was at all. Harren turned and looked at her, glad that she was awake. Princess Yuta asked the young boy where they were. Harren answered her that they were running from an assassin. Princess Yuta remembered that they had fallen into the river. The blue-haired girl breathed a sigh of relief. The young boy mentally asked himself, maybe he did something too much. But this modern princess told him that it was quite brave. The young boy apologized to her. Princess Yuta smiled and said that she was alive again thanks to Harren. She thanked him for saving her. Harren was very surprised, he did not expect to hear words of gratitude from the princess. Suddenly the princess came to the door and took hold of the handle. The princess says that someone from the palace must be looking for them right now. It's time for them to go back, because everyone will be worried, especially Governor Mavan. The young boy agreed with her words and followed Princess Yuta. They left the barn together and Harren closed the door behind him. The young boy asked Yuta if he could ask her for something. She asked what exactly he wanted. Harren says if she is royalty, then why are these people hunting her? She has quite a strong power. Suddenly the girl stopped. She was not ready to hear this very question. Princess Yuta began to tell that the weak royalty would be absorbed by someone else, more powerful. That is why she is persecuted. Princess Yuta asked the young lad Harren if he had ever lost something he loved so much before. She has already lost everything she loved. Harren didn't answer her, he just continued to listen to everything Princess Yuta was telling him. The girl went on to say that she only now realized that she needed power to protect what was truly very valuable to her. The young boy listened silently to everything the princess was saying. Princess Yuta said they needed to go back to the palace. Harren agreed with her. Suddenly, Harren heard something very strange, but he did not understand what it was. He raised his head to the mountain. The young boy took a closer look at what was there. Above was the commander of the royal guard tied to the column with a rope. Harren was frightened and the man shouted. He must have realized that the commander of the royal guard was there. Princess Yuta did not understand what he was talking about. What kind of person is it about? The two of them looked at the mountain at the same time. The princess was very surprised by what she saw. She expected to see anything there, but definitely not this. She shouted loudly to Sunday. That was the name of the commander of the royal guard. It seemed that Sun was already dead, because he was covered in blood and his head was down. Princess Yuta did not understand why the commander of the royal guard was tied to the log with a rope from above. She thought to herself, could it be that this was the work of Governor Mawan, but she quickly changed her mind and decided that it could not be, he was definitely not capable of such a thing. She couldn't even allow herself to think that Governor Mavan could do that, since he had always been loyal to her dead father. The girl with blue hair said that her uncle definitely wouldn't do that, he didn't need it. Suddenly, a guard of the palace of the Mavana lands appeared from around the corner. In his hands was a torch that lit his way. This guard saw Princess Yuta and the young boy Harren. The guard started shouting loudly that he found the princess. She was right in front of him and started running towards the princess. The rest of the men from the guard began to run towards Princess Yuta and the Harren boy. One of them said that Princess Yuta must be captured alive no matter what, because it was Governor Mawan's order to keep the princess alive. They can kill the boy, but the princess must be alive. A young boy, Harren, says that something is definitely wrong here. He still did not understand why everyone needed to catch the princess and why she was constantly being attacked. Finally, Princess Yuta began to understand that this was all the work of her uncle Mawan. In vain she thought that he was not capable of such a thing. Harren grabbed the princess's hand so that she would not remain standing there. The young boy told the girl that they had to get out of there very quickly, the sooner the better. If they don't escape now, Princess Yuta will be killed for sure. The blue-haired girl Yuta was very scared. She did not understand what was happening around her, why everyone was hunting her. A man in a hat was standing somewhere nearby. He was standing on the roof and his cloak was gently blowing in the wind. The man exhaled with satisfaction that they finally found the princess. This is exactly what he had been waiting for so long. The man in the Gorian hat stood next to the commander of the royal guard Sunday. He said that the night air was very refreshing. The commander of the Song Royal Guard pleaded with his last strength to the man in the hat to simply kill him so that he would not suffer. He had no strength at all, he was covered in blood. The man in the hat replies that he has no intention of killing him so easily. This is definitely not his goal. Suddenly, someone started to climb the steps. It was Governor Mavan. His face looked very upset and at the same time very angry. He was worried about his grandson and did not understand what he needed to do to finally be released and Governor Mavan to meet him. The man in the hat asked the governor if he had finally finished playing his loyalty to his dead king. The governor told him to just keep his mouth shut because he knew absolutely nothing about loyalty. He probably never even heard such a word. One of the palace guards approached Governor Mawan and called him. The governor turned to him and asked what had happened. The guard began to tell that the patrol troops had found Princess Yuta, but lost her again. She was with the same young boy Harren. The governor was very shocked by what he heard. The guard went on to say that they had already blocked off the entire area. They conduct a thorough search for the princess, soon they will be able to find them. Governor Mavan says that it is necessary to mobilize all the forces that have just remained in reserve. Everyone should be sure that the princess has finally been caught. The guard bowed and agreed with the governor. The governor said they were all miserable bastards. Suddenly the governor heard someone talking to him. "I'm so sorry, Mavan." It was a Song general. He says that the governor is not ashamed of the fact that he betrayed the dead king. Governor Marvin replied that he would pay for his crimes. Sun better worry about his personal life. Sun smiled at the governor's words. Suddenly, the commander of the royal guard loudly called Princess Yuta. He tells her that he is the one who has already died. Governor Marvin says that the warlord is a simple bastard. The general continued to shout that if the princess really cared about him, then she should run away. She must survive. Only then will Princess Yuta be able to fulfill the dying wish of the dead king. The governor started shouting at Sun that he would just cut out his tongue. Suddenly the governor was distracted by something. The man in the hat told Governor Mawan to just wait. Lure calls their prey. The governor stood in silence. He did not understand what he should do next. Small drops of blood constantly oozed from the commander of the royal guard. Guards from the Mavana palace constantly patrolled the area and were looking for Princess Yuta and the boy Haran. 2 guards approached one of the houses. 1 guard remained at the door, while the other went inside to check everything. The guard who entered the house said that there was no one there. It was a good thing that he did not see Princess Yuta and the boy Haran. They were sitting right under the roof. The guards began to discuss among themselves where these 2 could have escaped. One says that they definitely couldn't get very far, they need to look much better. The little boy Haran and the girl with blue hair Yuta sat very quietly so that they would not be heard or seen. Haran breathed a sigh of relief and said it was a good thing they couldn't be found. The Yuta girl sat quietly and said nothing. She says in her mind that it must have been the voice of Royal Guard Commander Song. She is sure that Sun is still alive. They quietly jumped to the floor. The young boy Haran asked her what she was doing. The troops of the Mawan lands were still nearby, they could hear them and find them very quickly. Princess Yuta replied to Haran that judging by the fact that the war had passed this area, they should be completely safe now. The girl with blue hair adds that she can't give Haran the reward now, she will give it a little later. But she herself still does not know whether I will be able to give her to him. Haran was very surprised by the girl's words. The girl says that since it has nothing to do with Haran's boyfriend, he needs to stay in that house for a while, a little longer than her, and then quietly escape from there. Suddenly the girl Yuta ran away very quickly. A task from the game appeared before Haran again. It said that if he did not complete this quest, he would simply die. The guards continued to search for Princess Yuta. Suddenly, one of the guards heard something rather strange. Princess Yuta attacked this guard from behind and hit him on the head. The guard fell to the ground and blood began to flow from him. Princess Yuta breathed a sigh of relief that there was already one less guard. She leaned towards him and began to look for some kind of weapon. He had a sword, which the girl took for further defense. With the sword in her hands, the princess was already much calmer. Princess Yuta looked up at the mountain. She looked at the commander of the royal guard and mentally asked him to wait just a little longer. She will save him. Suddenly behind her appeared the silhouette of a large man whose eyes glowed blue. She was very frightened and turned quickly to see who was there. While the girl Yuta turned around, someone had already hit this guard, but she did not understand who it was who protected her again. Behind that guard was the boy Haran. He tells the girl Yuta how she can act at all without any concrete plan. Young boy Haran adds that it was quite difficult to find her. The night was very deep, and the guards continued to search for Princess Yuta. Right next to the commander of the royal guard were 2 bodyguards. One of the guards looked out from around the corner, but why didn't he just come out to them? As it turned out, it was a young boy, Haran, who disguised himself as a security guard. Haran says to himself that these 2 guards are more relaxed than he imagined. Haran quietly approached the guards from behind. The young boy quickly killed them so that they would not have time to notice him. The young boy Haran breathed a sigh of relief that he could now save the royal guard commander. The commander of the royal guard was hanging on that log completely without strength. He barely had enough strength to open his eyes. The young boy quickly cut the ropes and let Sun down. Sun asked Heron why he was there, where Princess Yuta was, and if she was okay. Heron replied that everything is fine with the princess, she is in perfect order. He protected her properly. Heron threw Sun's arm over his shoulder and began to lift him up. All Sun could say was to thank Heron for taking care of him and Princess Yuta. Suddenly, someone from the mountain began to speak. The voice said it was him again. It was a man in a hat. He says that first Heron helped Princess Yuta escape and now he is helping his decoy to escape. Heron glared at the man in the hat. The man in the hat says that it is very sad on his part. The man continues to say that worrying about some boy is a waste of time. Suddenly the door opened and a lot of warriors from the palace of Mavan appeared. They all surrounded the little boy Heron and the commander of the royal guard Sun. The man in the hat came down from the mountain and stood directly in front of Heron and Sun. The man in the Gorian hat began to say that Heron had better be prepared for the consequences of all that he had done. Royal Guard Commander Song says that he is very ashamed of this situation because it is all because of him. Heron just kept silent at this time and smiled.
If you have watched up to this point, then I am very grateful to you, because this is where the video ends. If it's not difficult for you, then like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to continue this story, then write in the comments. Thank you all, I love you all.